So your instructions for this challenge were to write a Java program to print the numbers from 1 to 100, and for every multiple of 3, print the word steal, for every multiple of 5, print the word hawk, and for every multiple of both 3 and 5, which is effectively 15, print the word steal hawk. So let's look at a solution that I received from Akash Pillai. Akash did this, which is very nice, and if we run this, we'll see that it produces the following output down here. So for every multiple of 3, 3, 6, 9, and so on, it prints word steal. For every multiple of 5, 5, 10, 15, it prints the word hawks. And then for 15, 30, and so on, multiples of both 3 and 5, it prints the word steal hawks, which is exactly what we wanted. So how did Akash do it? Well, first of all, he had an iterator here, so we have either a for loop or a while loop. In this case, Akash used the for loop, beginning at 1 and ending at 100, since we have less than or equal to 100 here. So this satisfies our first condition, that we have a program to print the numbers from 1 to 100. Here we can see just that, and it increments by 1 each time, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so on until we get to 98, 99, 100, and then it stops. Now for each number from 1 to 100, Akash is checking for divisibility. So earlier I covered this modulo operator that will allow you to find the remainder of something, and if the remainder of a number being divided by this is 0, that means that this number is a factor of I. So first Akash is checking for divisibility by 3 and 5. And then he prints out steal hawks if it's divisible by 3 and 5. And if it's not divisible by 3 and 5, he has an else statement here that will bring us to the next if. So if this is false, continue to this one. If it's true, just go back and iterate. So let's say that we have I equals 16. Or actually I equals 18. So I is not divisible by 15. 18 divided by 15 is not equal to 0. So we go to this one. 18 divided by 3 is 6. It's a factor, so the remainder is 0, and we'll print out steal. Now if we had something like 25, we would skip these two because they're false. So we continue past these and go to this if statement. And 25 divided by 5 is 5. It's a factor, so we print out hawks. And if none of them are divisible by 3, 5, or 15, then we just print out the number like we have down here. So 1 does not satisfy any of these conditions. We'll just print out I. So Akash did this very well. Now notice that the order of the if-else statements is very important. So if I put this I equals I mod 15 here, if I move that somewhere else, let's say down here, and just for formatting purposes. So let's say we had that. We run this. We may run into a bit of a problem, right? The order of the statements is very important because you want to check, first of all, if it's divisible by 15 so that we don't have to print anything else. Here you'll notice that the word steal hawks together is never being printed because we have if-else statements here. So if any one of these conditions is true, it will not go to the rest of the if statements. It will just go back through the for loop. We need this if statement in the beginning so that we can check for divisibility by 3 or divisibility by 5 afterwards. So let's revert this back to how Akash had it. Now I have a different solution. It's a little bit shorter, but it might be a little bit less efficient too. I'm also iterating from I to 100. Here I just have less than 101, which is the same thing effectively as less than or equal to 100. And then I have a string named output. And output is an empty string that I initialized here and then give it a value here. So output is a blank string for each time. So I'm going from 1, 2, 3, 4 to 100. Every time that I do that, output turns into a blank string, an empty string. And if I mod 3 equals 0, so if I is divisible by 3, I want to add concatenate the word steal to output. So the first time that I do this, if I run the output, I'm printing out the number each time and adding the word after. I mod 3 equals 0, let's say, so I equals 3. The output would be an empty string plus steal, and when we're concatenating strings, we're putting them together. So here we just have the word steal. If I mod 5 equals 0, so let's say I equals 5, print out the word hawk. And if I is divisible by both 3 and 5, or effectively divisible by 15, you'll notice that I don't have an if statement for that here. That's because I'm concatenating each time, and I'm not resetting the string between these two. So if it's divisible by both 3 and 5, I'm outputting the concatenating to this empty string steal and concatenating to that string hawk. So I have steal and then adding to that word hawk. So that shows up every time I have something divisible by 3 and 5, or just divisible by 15, as you can see here. And in the end, I'm just printing this out at the end, everything with that statement. So if I isn't divisible by 3 or 5, then none of this actually applies, because output is an empty string, so I'm just printing out I. So those are two solutions. There are probably many other ways to do this. This problem is actually an adaptation of something called the Fizzbuzz Test. So here we have the Fizzbuzz Test. So you can look this up, and it's a rudimentary problem that lets you get into sort of the basic concepts of programming. So if statements, for loops, or while loops, methods necessarily. So it's a very good introduction to a basic programming lesson.